On March 7th and 8th, members of the Six Nations Council, along with senior staff, the police chief, the fire chief, and representatives from Six Nations Polytech, Grand River Employment and Training, Post-Secondary Education, Woodland Cultural Centre, and Gunokosha, traveled to Ottawa for 2 days of lobbying with the members of Parliament of the new federal government. We also held a meet and greet reception on Monday evening, March 7th. The purpose of this lobby was to introduce Six Nations as the largest populated First Nation in the country to the new members of Parliament. We felt that it was important to get up to Ottawa early in this government's new mandate so that we can establish a relationship with them that can be carried on over the next 4 years. We also took the message that we wanted them to get back to the table with Six Nations to discuss a unique process to resolve our land rights issues. We presented our global solution with the message that if we were able to resolve our land rights issues, we could also take care of all of our shortfalls in education, health, housing, infrastructure, etc. The staff and the representatives from the other agencies were essential in explaining the many shortfalls that our community has to endure in each of their respective areas. Over the 2 days, we held meetings with over 30 members of Parliament. The meetings included the members of the Standing Committee on Aboriginal Affairs, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General. We also had a meeting with Michael Ferguson, who is the Auditor General for Canada, and Minister Carolyn Bennett, the Minister of Indigenous Affairs. Minister Bennett seemed very excited about beginning a process with Six Nations and did express interest in getting back to the table. We also talked to her about education, and she advised that we should wait and see what is in the federal budget, which is to be presented on March 22nd. She suggested that we have another meeting as soon as possible after the budget. A representative from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office also joined us in the meeting with Minister Bennett. A number of other members of Parliament, senators, and senior parliamentary staff also attended our evening reception, which provided an opportunity for all of us to do a great amount of networking with them. Our staff also had displays and material on hand to distribute to our guests. The Honourable Jody Wilson-Raybould also attended the reception and spoke a few words. In honour of her election and her appointment as the Indigenous woman to Cabinet, we presented her with the corn husk stall and congratulated her and wished her much luck in her work. We also attended the release of the final report on the Feathers of Hope on justice and juries. This was done by a group of young people from Ontario. A joint release was done in Toronto, and I was the only chief in attendance at the one in Ottawa. We traveled to Ottawa on Sunday and we returned on Tuesday. Most of the people carpooled to Ottawa, some took the train and some flew because of time constraints. The funding for this event came out of the political lobbying line item that is always put in the central administration budget at the beginning of every fiscal year. The staff that went covered their travel expenses out of their own budgets. Everyone that took part in this lobby felt that this was a very successful event and that Six Nations certainly made an impact on Parliament Hill. We must now ensure that we follow up with those that we met and that we continue with our advocacy efforts and get meetings with all of those that we were unable to meet during this trip. Some of the other events that have taken place since our last update: on February 16th, we had a CBC crew traveling around Six Nations interviewing a number of people. They interviewed myself along with Phil Montour and Lonnie Bomberry. They also interviewed some of the residential school survivors, Audrey Hill and Robbie Hill. They visited Chiefswood Museum and they visited the Jukasa Studio. And all the interviews were featured on their show called Unreserved on CBC, and that was held on February 28th. On February 18th, I attended a meeting in Toronto with our Director of Social Services, Arla Skye, and our two directors at our child cares to review the child care regulations that I had talked about earlier. On the 19th of February, I spoke to some students at Assumption College. They were holding a model UN assembly, and they had asked me to come and speak about our experiences at the United Nations. And later in that day, Phil Montour and I did a lengthy interview on our land rights issues with APTN. I'm not sure when that's going to be aired, but it was done. At the end of February, 21st to the 24th, the annual Good Roads Convention was held in Toronto, and Councillors Terry General, Carl Hill, Ray Miracle, and Mike Montour, the Director of Public Works, attended along with myself. During that time, we also had the opportunity to meet with a number of Ontario Cabinet ministers. We met with Minister Ted McMeekin, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, We attended that meeting with the county, and we're going to have more meetings with him to talk about a number of issues, including the boundary discussions and the West Street property where we had forced to pay property tax under duress. We're working on with him to try and get that back. We also met with Minister Stephen Del Duca, the Minister of Transportation, and talked about trying to get some more funding for the bridges that we need to repair. We met with the Deputy Minister of Community Safety and Corrections, trying to get some money to cover the deficit we incurred because of the hazardous waste fire. We met Minister Brad Dogood, the Minister of Economic Development and Infrastructure, to see if they have any infrastructure dollars, and also to say that we're interested in more economic development projects. We also met Minister Glenn Murray, the Minister of Environment, to inform him of our drainage project and the additional funding that is needed. And I attended a meeting with Minister Bob Chiarelli, the Minister of Energy. I sit on a round table with other chiefs to talk about outstanding historical grievances we have with Hydro One, and also the many issues and concerns that our people have with their Hydro One bills. So these issues were brought up with Minister Chiarelli, and we're going to continue to meet with him and others to try and get some satisfactory resolution to some of these issues. On February 23rd, I was invited to attend the Premier's announcement of $100 million that will be provided over the next 3 years to help end violence against Indigenous women. I also took part, along with Councillor Carl Hill, in the Chiefs of Ontario Health Conference that was held from February 23rd to 25th. And on February 24th, I accompanied a group from Toronto who were the staff and the executive director of the Prince's Charities. That's Prince Charles, and he has his own charities, and they're interested in planning an event at the former residential school sometime in the summer. So I traveled with them, and they took a tour of the school, and there's planning now for the event that will take place. So as those plans get more firm, we'll certainly let the community know.